Today, we're diving into a thrilling horror movie expression where mystery, psychic powers, and a terrifying character named Longlegs will leave you in awe. If you're into spine-chilling and gripping stories, you won't want to miss this entire video. The story begins on a cold winter day in early 1970 Oregon. Snow blankets the ground, muffling sounds as a young girl steps out of her modest home into the quiet neighborhood. The chill hangs in the air, and as she breathes, a soft mist forms with each exhale. She notices a car parked nearby, its windows clouded over and engine idling quietly, as though someone inside is watching and waiting. Driven by curiosity, she moves cautiously toward it, her small footsteps crunching through the fresh snow. Suddenly, she catches a faint whisper, a sound that stops her in her tracks. Turning around, she is startled to see a man emerging from the shadows. His skin is pale, almost spectral, and there's something unsettling about his slow, deliberate movements, each one seeming intended to inspire unease. He addresses her as if they are familiar, calling her the almost birthday girl, with a smile that feels hollow, never reaching his eyes. He adds a chilling detail about wearing his long legs today, a cryptic comment that only deepens the ominous mood. This haunting encounter lingers, casting a shadow over everything that follows. Jump ahead 20 years to the 1990s. We meet FBI agent Lee Harker, a sharp, relentless investigator with a reputation for cracking even the toughest cases. Partnered with Agent Fisk, the two are on what should be a routine assignment in a quiet neighborhood. Lee's honed instincts often lead her to details others overlook, making her a critical asset to the Bureau. Today, her intuition pulls her toward a particular house, though they've barely begun their search. Fisk, slightly doubtful but willing to follow her lead, steps up and knocks on the door. In that moment, a heavy silence settles over them, and time seems to slow. Then a gunshot pierces the stillness, and Fisk is hit. Acting on pure reflex, Lee rushes inside, weapon drawn and heart racing. She finds the shooter, a man sitting calmly at the end of his bed, hands raised in surrender. The scene feels almost surreal. Despite the sudden violence, the man's eerie calm suggests he's been anticipating this moment all along. Following the incident, Lee meets with her superior, Agent Carter, a seasoned agent with experience in countless strange cases. Carter is nonetheless intrigued by Lee's unique abilities. He suggests she might possess a kind of psychic intuition, a notion Lee brushes off but can't fully dismiss. Carter then hands her a deeply unsettling case, a string of family murders stretching back decades. In each tragic instance, the father was the perpetrator, killing his wife and children before taking his own life. At every crime scene, eerie letters filled with satanic symbols and encrypted messages were found, all signed by a mysterious figure known as Longlegs. As Lee dives further into the investigation, Carter extends an invitation to join his family for dinner. At his home, she meets his wife, Anna, and their spirited young daughter, Ruby. The warmth of their family life is a stark contrast to the grim cases Lee has been entangled with. Ruby, a bright and joyful child, quickly warms up to Lee and even asks her to come to her upcoming birthday party. In a rare moment of openness, Lee shares that she once dreamed of being an actress before her path led her to law enforcement. It's a vulnerable moment, offering a glimpse into the life Lee might have led if her choices had taken her elsewhere. Outside of work, Lee leads an isolated life in a remote cabin, a setting that offers her the quiet she needs to immerse herself fully in her investigations. However, her relationship with her mother, Ruth, is fraught with tension. Their conversations are infrequent, often short and uncomfortable. Ruth has become intensely religious, bordering on fanaticism, and her persistent pleas for Lee to pray only strain their bond further. Despite Lee's attempts to connect with her mother, their exchanges remain awkward and distant, with an underlying rift that neither seems able to bridge. Sudden heavy pounding on the door jolts her. Instinctively, she grabs her gun, moving cautiously toward the door. Through the window, she glimpses a shadowy figure standing silently at the edge of the woods surrounding her cabin. The figure stands eerily still, watching her every move. Determined, Lee steps outside, ready to confront whoever or whatever waits in the dark. But as she draws closer, the figure vanishes into the trees, leaving no trace. Returning to her house, Lee discovers that the intruder has left something behind. an envelope bearing a foreboding message. Do not open until January 14th. Defying the ominous warning, Lee opens the envelope to find a birthday card. The card is scrawled with satanic symbols and coded messages, eerily resembling the letters discovered at the Longlegs crime scenes. Inside, she finds a cryptic passage from the Book of Revelation. "I stood upon the sand of the sea," along with a chilling threat that makes her blood run cold. The message leaves no doubt. Whoever sent this card is deeply aware of her work on the Longlegs case and disturbingly familiar with her personal life. The following day, Carter calls Lee in to investigate yet another gruesome murder linked to Longlegs. Once again, it's the father who has committed the crime, brutally killing his family before ending his own life. As Lee and Carter examine the crime scene, they come across the decomposing body of one of the daughters, a horrifying sight that only fuels Lee's determination to stop this killer. Back at the station, Lee shares her findings with Carter. She has uncovered a chilling pattern. Each murder occurred within 6 days of one of the daughters' birthdays, all on the 14th of different months. When she maps the dates on a calendar, they form a triangle with one date notably absent. Lee deduces that this missing date could be when Longlegs plans to strike again. Nevertheless, Lee holds back one important fact. She doesn't reveal the birthday card she got from Longlegs. The thought of an accomplice lingers in her thoughts. Could Longlegs be collaborating with someone else? Or perhaps there are several individuals helping him carry out his terrible actions. Elsewhere in the same vicinity, Longlegs is shown in all his horrifying form. His looks are disturbing: thin, unkempt hair, swollen features, and skin so pale it seems almost unnatural. In a nearby store, he tries to intimidate a teenage cashier, but she simply brushes him off as just another odd, unsettling man. Longlegs retreats to his home, where he spirals into a frenzy, his madness slowly overtaking him. As the investigation progresses, Lee and Carter shift their focus to the Camera family. Years ago, the father brutally murdered his wife and children, but one daughter, Carrie Ann, survived since she was at school when the massacre occurred. Now an adult, Carrie Ann has been locked in a psychiatric facility, catatonic for nearly 2 decades. Lee and Carter visit the family farm, hoping to uncover new clues. Inside the barn where the murders took place, they uncover something chilling beneath the floorboards, a lifelike doll eerily resembling young Carrie Ann. Within the doll's head, they find a strange metal ball. When examined more closely, the ball emits unsettling static noises that gather horrific visions in Lee's mind. The examiner who inspects the doll claims he even heard it whisper his ex-wife's name, adding a further layer of terror to the investigation. Driven to find answers, Lee visits Carrie Ann at the psychiatric ward. The orderly explains that Carrie Ann had been in a vegetative state for years, showing no signs of improvement. However, she recently emerged from her catatonia after a man visited her, someone the orderly describes as deeply unsettling. When Lee speaks to Carrie Ann, her voice is flat and devoid of emotion, as she recounts the day her father killed their priest and then her mother. In a chilling admission, Carrie Ann reveals that she would now do anything the man asked of her, even if it meant killing Lee. The conversation leaves Lee profoundly unsettled. It's clear that Longlegs' control over her and others runs far deeper than anyone could have anticipated. Carter shocks Lee with a revelation. She had an encounter with Longlegs when she was just a child, a memory she had long suppressed. The realization plunges Lee into a whirlwind of confusion and fear. Desperate for answers, she visits her mother, Ruth, hoping to make sense of her fragmented recollections. Ruth, ever the devout believer, tells Lee that she should consider herself fortunate to have grown up and survived, implying that her survival was no mere accident. While searching through Ruth's belongings, Lee stumbles upon a photograph, a picture taken by young Lee herself, capturing the moment when Longlegs visited their home all those years ago. The image triggers a flood of memories, and Lee brings this vital piece of evidence to Carter. With the photograph in hand, the FBI tracks down Longlegs, who is revealed to be Dale Ferdinand Koppel. His capture is a significant victory, but the horror is far from over. In a chilling interrogation video, Longlegs stares into the camera, singing "Happy Birthday" to Lee with a sinister grin. Lee faces him in the interrogation room, determined to uncover the truth about his accomplices. However, Longlegs speaks in cryptic riddles, claiming to serve the man downstairs, and urging Lee to ask her mother about his partners in crime. Before he can divulge more, Longlegs suddenly and violently slams his face into the table, mutilating himself beyond recognition. He dies shortly after, leaving Lee and Carter with even more questions and far fewer answers. Feeling the crushing weight of the investigation, Lee returns to her mother's house, bringing her colleague, Agent Browning. The house is eerily still when they arrive. As they search for Ruth, a gunshot rings out through the halls. Browning collapses to the floor, lifeless. Lee rushes to find her mother, standing over his body, holding a shotgun. Ruth's face is devoid of expression, her eyes cold and distant. In her hands, she clutches a doll that bears a disturbing resemblance to a young Lee. Ruth mutters a prayer, her voice laced with a strange blend of resignation and defiance. She declares that she's finally free from his control, before raising the shotgun and firing at the doll. The doll shatters into a cloud of black smoke, revealing a metal ball inside, identical to the one found in Carrie Ann's doll. Ruth's confession is both gut-wrenching and terrifying. She admits that she struck a deal with Longlegs to protect her daughter, offering her help as an accomplice in exchange for Lee's safety. Ruth had been secretly delivering cursed dolls to the families Longlegs targeted, each one imbued with dark magic that compelled the fathers to commit their unspeakable acts. Longlegs had been living in the basement of the Harker home all those years, a constant and looming presence that Ruth had tried to fend off with prayer and sacrifice. Ruth justifies her actions, claiming they were necessary to shield Lee from eternal damnation. But her words only amplify Lee's sense of betrayal, leaving her shattered and conflicted. The revelation devastates Lee, shattering her sense of reality. The doll Ruth destroyed had been the source of the psychic connection Lee had felt throughout the investigation, subtly guiding her toward the truth. The overwhelming realization that her mother had been complicit in the murders is too much for Lee to handle. Burdened by the weight of this knowledge, she collapses, losing consciousness as Ruth's voice fades into the background, leaving Lee alone with the horrifying nightmares she has unearthed. When Lee finally regains consciousness, she finds herself in her childhood bedroom. The room is unchanged, perfectly preserved down to the smallest detail. The phone rings, shattering the silence. Lee picks it up, and a distorted, familiar voice greets her. It's Longlegs, taunting her once more. He reminds her that she's missed Ruby's birthday, sending a wave of panic through Lee. Realizing that Ruby is in imminent danger, Lee bolts from the room, grabs her mother's car, and speeds toward Carter's house, her heart racing with fear. When Lee arrives at the house, her worst fears are realized. Ruth is already there, holding a doll that bears a disturbing resemblance to Ruby. Carter and his family are in a trance, unable to resist Ruth's control. The scene is a nightmare. Anna stands in the kitchen, her hands drenched in blood, while Carter stands motionless, a knife in his hand. Ruth, with a calm yet authoritative voice, commands them to continue the birthday celebration, urging Carter and Anna to cut the cake. Acting quickly, Lee shoots Carter to prevent him from harming Ruby. Furious at the interruption, Ruth lunges at Lee with a knife. In the ensuing chaos, Lee fires again, and Ruth collapses to the ground, lifeless. Fatigued and overwhelmed, Lee holds Ruby close to her chest. She attempts to destroy the Ruby doll, but the gun is out of ammunition. With no other choice, she lifts Ruby and exits the house, leaving behind the nightmare that has shattered her world. In the film's last scene, we return to the FBI interrogation room. Longlegs, who was supposed to be dead, sits calmly at the table. His face is scarred, but his eyes shine with evil pleasure. He smiles at the camera, his laughter filling the room. "Hail, Satan," he says quietly, blowing a kiss to the audience before the screen fades to black. The chilling feeling stays with you long after the credits end. And that's how today's story ends. What do you think will happen next? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.